I just realised I completely forgot to do a February reading wrapper. Hi everyone, Mariah here and welcome back to my channel. So I was sitting down writing my notes about what content I had to make for the week when I realised that I completely bypassed the fact that I didn't do a February reading wrapper. January felt like a year long and it's like I sneezed, ended up in March, and I was just like, where did February go? To be honest with you, I was quite busy in February, and where it took quite a while to make my Edinburgh vlog, I think I just kind of forgot to do little bits in between. If you want to watch a nice cozy vlog exploring Edinburgh and going book shopping and doing all things like that, then feel free to go and check that out. I really enjoyed making that vlog, and watching all those clips back, it just made me really want to go back. So yeah, despite the fact it is now halfway through March, let's pretend that we're closer to February and this is the reading wrap up for it. So as always, I'm going to take you through the books that I've read, whether I would recommend them, and my general thoughts and feelies. So get comfy, get cozy, and let's have a bookish catch up. So the first book I finished last month was Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune, and this is a contemporary fiction. If you're looking for a very cozy, heartwarming and whimsical read, I would definitely recommend this book. This book is a really heartwarming read and is all about having a life after death and learning to accept death. So this was actually part of the book club book going into February, and I'm really glad it was chosen because I think had it not, I don't think I ever would have known of this book's existence. In this book, it follows our main character called Wallace, and he is genuinely one of the grumpiest MMCs I have ever read about in my life. Wallace is in his 40s and he is a very miserable and very mean guy, and one day he is actually greeted by his Reaper. His Reaper explains to him that he has to go on this journey of accepting death, and he has to go back to a cafe, meet a bunch of people who are going to help him get through all this acceptance of death and stages of grief in order to essentially move forward and go through the door to the afterlife. And poor Wallace is like, I beg your finest pardon. Wallace absolutely refuses to believe that he has passed away. He's having absolutely none of it. But we go through his journey and his story of understanding everything that's happened to him, why everything is the way that it is, and how he has to move forward. He meets a bunch of characters on the way who have kind of all gone through the same thing, and essentially we are following out whether he actually accepts everything in the end or not. I absolutely loved the concept of this book. The idea of kind of having life even after death was really intriguing, and the fact that we had to follow such a grumpy character as well. I think Wallace was the perfect character for this book. He actually reminds me of the headmaster from the sex education series, despite the fact that he's older in that series, and also I think Wallace is American. You know, when you just have a character in your head and it doesn't matter how it's described in a book, you've got that person in your head. Yep, that was it for me. I just think the idea of watching someone's journey of accepting death was really interesting. It's something that I've personally not read about before. I just think the way that the story went and the direction and the development was so good. This is also some of the funniest writing I have ever read. The humor is fantastic. The sarcasm, immaculate. You know, when a character is so grumpy, everything they say is just so miserable, but then other people are able to kind of bounce back of that dry humor. It was just so good. There's a character in this book, she is absolutely hilarious. This is genuinely one of the first books that actually made me laugh out loud. Don't get me wrong, I've had a giggle here and there, but this book, it did have me howling. I just think the humor was so great because Wallace is so grumpy and so miserable, but then you're meeting all the other characters that he has to work with who are just so sarcastic and so like banterous and also try and wind people up all the time. The characters are just absolutely fantastic, and I pretty much loved every single one of them. They were humorous, they were interesting, they were unique, and they all definitely added something to the story. Even Wallace, I sometimes really struggle with miserable and grumpy characters because I'm kind of just like, I'm so over it after a certain point. But there's something about Wallace that is just really funny. And of course you actually kind of feel sorry for him because, you know, even though he's such a miserable and horrible person and he wasn't great when he was alive, you feel bad for him because the poor guy is just really confused. Like, imagine just waking up one day and there's a Reaper talking to you and they're just like, hi, yeah, okay, let's go. Like, what would you do? For me, I just found this book so interesting. I think there was so much going on, but also there was so much development in the story as well. I also loved all the characters we got to meet along the way and why they kind of do what they do. There are also characters known as husks, which I was so interested by. I think they're such a a cool concept. And of course, it's incredibly heartwarming and it does make you feel all warm and fuzzy inside. For me, I did give this book 3 stars, and you're probably thinking, well, you've just said a lot of really good things about it, so why did you only rate it 3 stars? For me, 3 stars is still a really good rating. It's a book that I really enjoyed. It's just not maybe one I think about all the time after finishing it. I think it would have been higher had, one, the story had been a little bit longer, because I do feel like some of the character developments in this story were just a teeny tiny bit rushed, and it therefore felt a bit unrealistic at times. Another thing that I wish was touched upon more were some of the kind of meanings behind things in just that little bit more detail. It wasn't absolutely necessary. I don't think it's needed. I am someone who absolutely loves knowing the whys behind things, so I wish it was developed that little bit more. And finally, the last thing is, I don't know whether I agree with the ending or not. It was not a bad ending whatsoever. I actually really enjoyed it. But sometimes I sit there and wonder, if it should have gone in the other direction instead, would that have made it better, in my opinion? And where I'm kind of in the middle ground, I think that's why the indecisiveness is making me feel this way. But overall, really enjoyable book. The next book I finished reading was The Warm Hands of Ghosts by Catherine Arden, and this is a historical fiction. Again, this was another book club book going into March, and oh my goodness, I'm so glad that it was recommended, because again, I don't think I would have picked this book up otherwise. I wouldn't have known about it, and I would 1000% recommend this book. If you're looking for a book that is all about finding a lost one in a war, and then also follows the story of someone else having to make friends with the enemy, but there is also mysterious characters going around, throwing lots of mind games in there, you're gonna love this book. So this book is set during World War I, and it follows 2 main characters. It follows our main character, Laura, and she is a nurse and she helps injured soldiers in hospitals. Laura receives word that her brother has passed away, but she's just got this feeling that something isn't quite right. Therefore, she actually decides to set off on a journey to try and find her brother. She packs her bags, moves to France, where she hopes to be closer to finding out the truth. And then the other character is Freddie, and he is actually a soldier in the war, and he is trapped, but he is actually trapped with someone from the enemy side, and they have to work together to get out. So it's that kind of forbidden friendship development. I absolutely loved the story in this book. I am someone who loves moving and gripping reads, and for me, I just really felt for Laura, and I just really wanted her to find her brother. But then I also felt really sorry for our other character, Freddie, because I can't even begin to imagine how he must feel going through the things that he did. This book is written so well, it makes you feel really connected to the characters. Laura is such a strong, compassionate person, and she's so determined to find her brother, and you're really rooting for her. I just felt like the author wrote it so well, it made you feel like you were actually going on that journey with them, like you were there right next to them. I absolutely loved Freddie's pov as well, because I just felt so bad for him. The stuff that he has to go through in order to survive, and imagine having to work with the enemy and be trapped with someone you know you're not even supposed to be speaking to. At this point, we're basically watching Freddie having to survive, but also not get caught helping somebody. The emotions that you have to experience them go through is just so moving, and I just think it really makes you realize just how tragic everything is. There is also a character in this book known as the Fiddler, and he is one of the most interesting characters. Despite having a very strange name, I wish it was something different. He is very mind-bending. He is essentially a myth, and people don't know whether he actually exists and he is a person playing with people's minds, or whether he is a myth. But he adds so many twists and turns to the story, and so many mind games, and he really adds a lot of dimension to the story, I think. Didn't expect a plot twist in this story as well. Where it was a historical fiction and I was so gripped to the emotional side of things, the plot twist really caught me off guard, and I think it worked so well. All of the side characters as well are just so good, and a couple of them I believe are also based on real people. I just can't get over how well this was written as well. The amount of research that has gone into this book as well, you can really see that that's came through. This is actually the first book where I read the acknowledgements, because I was so interested in hearing about what she had to do to write something like this, and the amount of research that went into it. The people that she spoke about that had to fight in the war, like Tolkien and everything, like you can really tell she has done her research, and it's just some of the most beautiful writing. I really enjoyed this book. I did give this book 4.5 stars, and for me, I think the only thing that I wish we had more of was Freddie's pov. For me, his povs were my favorite. I think they were so gripping and really interesting and really emotional. But I do believe at times things just felt a little bit rushed. And I think had we had those few extra chapters, I think it really would have smoothed it out and made a lot more sense. But yeah, I genuinely cannot recommend this book enough. The next book that I finished, and this might not come as a surprise, but it is Tales of the Cafe, and this is by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, and this is one of my favorite series. I would 1,000,000% recommend these books. So this is actually the second book of the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series, and one of my closest friends got me this for my birthday, and we have this ongoing joke now that she's just gonna get me every single book in the series at some point throughout the year. If you're looking for a book that is not only cozy but is also, again, very moving and very emotional, then I really recommend these books. You can actually read these books as standalones, but I've been reading them in order because they are still interconnected. So in these books, it's all about a cafe based in Tokyo that allows you to go back in time to meet somebody. There are some rules and there are some exceptions, but the idea is that you have the time it takes until your coffee goes cold. Each book has a set of stories in there, and you'll find out who they are, why they want to go back into the past, and who they want to meet. I did give this book 5 stars, and honestly, I just don't have anything bad to say about these books so far. I did give Before the Coffee Gets Cold 6 stars, and I think for me, because it was the first book that kind of introduced me to the series, it's got that sentimental value to it. But I do think I connected to the characters more in the first book because some of them I felt kind of very connected to due to personal experiences as well. I kind of knew what they were going through. I think it also had better emotional plot twists in there as well. But for me, this book was absolutely fantastic. I have nothing fault to say about it. Something I love about this book as well is because it has to obviously repeat all the rules and everything in case you are reading them as standalones, but it doesn't feel repetitive. It's not like pages upon pages upon pages long of reading the same thing again. It's just so cozy but so heartwarming, and it's just genuinely so moving. It's got great humor in there too, the way the characters interact with each other, the way some of the characters are, they're just really funny. I do have a good cry when I read these books. This is just one of those series where I just feel like every book is gonna be like 5 or 6 stars for me. The only thing that I could say is to add a cat in there because it's on the cover, but there's not one in the book. And then last but certainly not least, we have a very anticipated read of mine, and it is Shatter Me, and this is a romance dystopian thriller. Yes, I had to Google that. If you are looking for a series that is so gripping, where the plot twist, more than plot twist should twist, I 1,000% recommend reading this series. Please, please, please read this book. Please, it's so good. I do hear that a lot of people do get put off by this series because it is a YA, but it certainly doesn't feel that way when you're reading it. At least I don't think it does anyway. For one, what the characters do and say is just mind-blowing. But 2, I just think it's so good. I was very fortunate to receive a limited edition sampler of Watch Me thanks to Electric Monkey, and this is set 10 years after the Shatter Me series. They also announced that they would be hosting a readathon where readers could take part in going through all the books in the series together, ready for the release of Watch Me in April. I'm really glad that they did this because I've been wanting to read Shatter Me for a while, and this really helped with kind of encouraging me to pick up the books and also read it alongside other people. So in this book, we are introduced to a government known as the Re-establishment, and essentially there are sectors all around the world, and each of those sectors have leaders, and they all promised to make the world a better place, but instead they decided to just actually hand out universe cards to everybody and basically take everything away from everyone. They wanted to strip language, they wanted to ban books, they wanted to get rid of education, they want to just completely factory reset and change the entire world. People have been taken from their family homes and forced to live in shelters. People are forced to work in factories. Food and basic necessities are pretty much impossible to come across. People have to really prove their worth. Cities have been abandoned and destroyed. It's barren wasteland everywhere. There's radiation zones, there's no-go zones. It's just all gone to pot. And in this book, we are introduced to a character called Julia, and she has been locked in an asylum for almost a year, and you'll find out why when you read this book. She's essentially had enough of this life, and she doesn't understand why she's had to go through everything that she's had to go through. She decides that she wants to try and take the Re-establishment down. She wants to try and take over. She wants to burn it to the ground, and she wants to try and make the world a better place. And honestly, I'm rooting for her. You go, girl. But there are people that she meets along the way who cause her a lot of trouble. There are so many things that happen and go wrong. This is genuinely one of the most emotional roller coaster rides I've ever been on. This is genuinely one of the most gripping series that I have read so far. I'm currently on Defy Me, so I am very much flying through the series. I have been eating this series up. I really enjoyed this, and honestly, it just keeps getting better and better. I will go into this series in a lot more detail with a little update vlog that's coming out sometime in the week, but essentially I am just absolutely devouring this series. I think this book really sets up everything so perfectly. For me, I was just fully invested in Juliet's story as to why she was put in the asylum in the first place and why she is seen as such a threat. Like, what did she do? The characters that you are introduced to in this book are all phenomenal. I love every single one of them. The only character that ruffled my feathers was Warner, because quite frankly, he could have stubbed his toe at 2 o'clock in the morning and I wouldn't have cared, wouldn't have asked if he was okay. But there was something about him that was just really gripping. I knew there was something behind his story. There is just something behind everything. And oh my goodness, it all just kicks off. It all goes crazy, it all goes wild, and every book leaves on such a good cliffhanger. The happiness, the sadness, the shock, you name it, I have experienced it. Honestly, just couldn't put these books down. I've been absolutely flying through them. The development and the story is genuinely so interesting. I'm rooting for all the characters so far. Bar Warner, he could have got in the bin. I am really excited to give my updates on this because I know so many people are really interested in my thoughts and feelings, so I'm really excited to give those to you as I go on. But yeah, this really set me up and I knew that I would be demolishing this series. So technically my entire March TBR is the Shatter Me series. It's a wild ride for sure. And yeah, that concludes my February reading wrap up. I really enjoyed my February reads. I think they've all been absolutely incredible books. I really loved the variety as well and the kind of different stories I got to experience. But yeah, as always, let me know in the comments if you have read any of these books because I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts and feelies. Also, feel free to message me on my Instagram or on TikTok if you want to have a bookish conversation because I absolutely love talking about books with people. And honestly, I've been talking to people at the moment about the Shatter Me series and it's been so much fun. So yeah, if it's something you want to do, you are more than welcome to do so, by the way. But yeah, thank you so much for your support as always. It genuinely means everything to me. I hope you have a great rest of your week and I will catch you in the next video. Bye.